Muito boa tarde, bem-vindos ao Motorcast do Stand Virtual. É com muito prazer que temos connosco John Bailey. John Bailey é o ex-presidente da Cox Automotive International nos últimos 5 anos. Hoje em dia é um investidor no setor automóvel, com uma visão mundial, investimentos em vários países, e é esse o objetivo hoje, de conversarmos um pouco com ele. Ele vem de longe. John Bailey está em Miami, em Fort Lauderdale, onde o entrevistamos aqui. E é por essa mesma razão que vamos fazer a entrevista em inglês. So, moving into English, John, thank you very much for joining us. I hope everything is well with you in Miami.
It is good, thank you, Nuno. Good to see you after all this time. So, under these uncertain circumstances, but great to see you. But all's good so far.
So true. I think many people, even in Portugal, they know you and all over the world because of so many years you having that international role, and in the last few years as president of Cox Automotive International, and you have more than 30 years experience around the world that very few people have around automotive. Could you just give us like a brief overview of what you have been doing in so many years, so much experience?
Oh well, so take 30 years and cram it into 2 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I started out in the family business. We had a car auction business in the UK. When I was the young old age of 18, started in the family business, grew with the business, and then in about 1990, we did a partnership with Cox Automotive, Cox Enterprises with Mannheim, using a technology of satellite before the internet arrived. Built that business up, that relationship, and then they entered the UK market in partnership with us for auto auctions, car auctions in 1996. We acquired several auctions over the years. We started some technology businesses. We acquired some technology businesses. We expanded into Europe, and we grew the business over those years. I then joined the Cox Automotive Board and took responsibility for the whole of the global operation for Cox Automotive. That was about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Did about 5 years doing that. I retired last year, and now I'm sort of semi-retired, should we say? But yeah, that's the short version of a very long career. But when I left, the Cox Automotive International was 5,000 people in about 20 countries. So it's a reasonable size operation. And as you know, you were there with me for much of the journey in many of those countries, which we pioneered. So it's been a fun.
Sure. And talking about pioneer, I would like to pick up on one element that the majority of people will not know, and I think is really interesting, is that these days we can see, even on the automotive market, how relevant internet can become, and we see the digital sales boosting. But you clearly were one of the pioneers around the world, and that partnership with Mannheim at the time, because you started some of the initial and incentivizing digital sales through satellite. Wasn't like that? So you were like the initial internet sales through satellite. Is that true?
That is true. That is a great picture.
We'll go to this picture in a minute.
We started in, it was about 1991. And we basically turned we had two auctions, and one of the auctions had 2 lanes. We converted one lane into a studio, and we generated an auction with no dealers present and no cars present. And it was just a bit like a telethon, a video of the auctioneer and telephone operators taking calls from dealers. And we basically used, for the first time ever, we used technology to sell hundreds of cars at an auction, with the dealer staying on their premises and the cars staying in the compound. We did that with Ford Motor Company because they had business television throughout their dealer network in the UK. And the satellite was the medium to get that digital sell across, because in 1991, the internet was very, very unheard of. Hardly anybody knew about it. And it certainly was nowhere near what it is today. So that allowed us to do something very, very unique and created a digital product. And then what I did is I went to the US, visited with Mannheim Auctions, owned by Cox, knocked on their door and said, hey, this is better for you because your dealers fly all over the country, whereas the UK is a small little island. And they loved it. We partnered, and then did.
Talking to Ralph Lineado, if I remember correctly, right at the time.
Yeah, that's when I first met Ralph Lineado, who was heading up the international for the business for Cox for Mannheim, and then we partnered with Ralph and the Mannheim guys and did sales for Chrysler in the US over a couple of years, using some of those days Cox had TV stations. We used one of their TV stations in Orlando. So it was a big affair. It was a great success. First time ever that cars were sold remotely without the dealer or the car moving. So it was, as you say, very pioneering, very early days. And then what happened is the internet came along a couple of years later.
I would like Ricardo now to put the picture up that he was putting you on the I would like to leapfrog that, because you exactly started like the real pioneer, with a satellite. But many years ago, we were also introducing all over Europe, and I think Mannheim was leading all that in Europe, internet sales in car auction, and not that one, Ricardo, the one on the plane, where you were bidding cars, on a private jet going from the UK to Atlanta, if I remember correctly. Isn't that so?
Yeah, it was. I was actually headed back from our Kelly Blue Book operation in California to Atlanta, and we're on a company plane with Wi-Fi, and I thought, well, look, the internet simulcast, which is basically the same as the satellite auction we started all those years ago, and that's the key product that we use today. And the question is, it's about buying a car wherever you are. You don't have to attend the sale. So as long as you got Wi-Fi, and we had Wi-Fi at 41,000 feet, I dialed into one of our sales in the UK and purchased 2 or 3 cars online. The dealers in the auction lane had no idea that the bids that were coming up on the screen that says internet bidder was from an airplane at 41,000 feet. So
really impressed, man. How in these days that we work together, how it progressed, and even started clearly even before me. So on that example, and I was asked, Ricardo, like you also been clearly recognized in the organization on where you worked before in Cox, very relevant in terms of the world. And you've seen so many countries, right? You've been there with so many people. You've seen that, right? So, and then becoming president of Cox Automotive International. How do you see what's the feedback that you're also collecting? That because you are connected with me, you are connected with many people around the world. How do you see the impact of coronavirus around the world at the moment, John?
I still keep in touch with a few people. Obviously not as heavily involved as I was, clearly. But yeah, how do I see the impact? Well, first off, nobody could have anticipated this. We do all sorts of disaster planning and floods and hurricanes and earthquakes, but no one ever thought about a pandemic. So it's been a major shock to everybody. Interestingly enough, this is so it will create, in my view, it's going to create if not already, a global recession, without a doubt. The difference this time to any normal recession is we weren't locked up at home. Yes, some stores were closing, some people lost their jobs in a typical downturn of an economy, but this situation, when you've got offices and buildings and businesses just shuttered up and closed, is very, very different. The people I speak to, a lot of people are thinking that maybe we'll get back to some level of normal after the lockdowns of each country is released. I don't actually agree with that. I believe we will not be going back to what we were before. There will be a very big change. I think it's highlighted to many companies probably how more efficient they can be by forcing them to work online. I know several businesses that have adopted a very good online strategy. They're still new to it, but they're creating, they're doing things that they are now being forced to do because their businesses are closed. So in that way, it's a good thing. So I think that will increase the entrepreneur. I do believe, though, there's quite a bit of pain and it's not just the automotive industry. There's many industries that are affected by this. Almost every industry, from airlines to hotels to restaurants to shopping malls. There's very, very small percentage of businesses that are not affected by this immensely. And what that means to me is that I can see a challenge when we go back to whatever the new normal is. Then, there's going to be a in the automotive space. I'm convinced there's going to be an oversupply of cars with less buyers.
That's exactly the question I was. That the picture we had before is like many people been asking in Portugal in particular, and even some conversations I had with the US. It's about there will be too much stock available, too many cars, or demand will pick up, or we're going to face some issues of too many cars, not enough demand, and in this case there could be a pressure on the prices to go down. What's your perspective, John?
That is my view. When you look at, and I'll give you the example with it's the same in the US, the same probably in Portugal and different countries. You've got a used car market and a new car market of several different sizes depending on the country. So what you've got now is that you've basically had a freeze put on each of those businesses, new and used, because people have been locked up. They're not allowed to go out to go and buy a car, even if they wanted to buy a car. So it's on pause, which means it hasn't affected the values of cars today, because we haven't all gone back to work. So we haven't gone back to normal. So it's just on freeze frame. So when it's released, and you've got lots of government help. A lot of governments are helping businesses and individuals with furlough schemes and tax, credits and all sorts of financial things, which is needed very much so to keep the industries and economies alive. But when we come out of lockdown and go back to business, those funds stop. That assistance ends. So you are now back into creating your own revenue to pay your own expenses, to pay your own salary bills and all the running costs of a dealership. Yeah. So companies will need cash for that, and to get cash, they need to sell cars. They need to provide servicing, maintenance, spare parts. That is not going to start on the day one of when we're end of lockdown. That is not going to start where it left off. It's going to ramp up slowly, and it's going to take time. So there will be a shortage of cash. Dealers, I think, will need to get out of some of their stock. Lots of dealerships have just sat on inventory, just parked up, doing nothing. They're going to be very much overaged. The market will have changed. The value of cars will come down. All those leasing company cars, all those rental company cars, anything that would have been due in the last 2 or 3 months while we've been locked down, are all going to come back at the same time. Plus the cars that are sat, which weren't sold before lockdown. So all of a sudden you've got a massive increase of cars, and you've got buyers. Not only have you got people who lose their jobs, but a lot of people have financially been hurt by this, whether it be pensions, whether it be investments, whether it be savings. So everybody's going to be watching their purse strings a lot tighter. So that's the bit that I think will be the recession, is because people will be buying less than they were before the COVID-19 arrived. So in that way, it'll be similar in a way to the 2008 recession. Slight difference there is that the banks are better funded with their balance sheets as they were in 2008. That was the big drama in 2008. But people still, it's going to be about cash. And I believe that a lot of dealer groups in most markets will need to offload some of their stock. I mean, the only way of doing that is basically price. And there'll be more cars chasing less buyers, in my view. People say, but there's going to be more people who want to be buying cars because they don't want to take public transport. Yes, most likely, some of that. But then some people can't afford to buy a car because they may have had a car before the event. Who knows? There will be a little bit of benefit from that. But there's going to be finance repossessions. People will be giving up their car. There'll be early terminations. Take the tourist market, the rental fleets. Look at that. It's going to be decimated. There's thousands and thousands of cars parked at airports. Well, the planes aren't coming back full on day one of when the lockdown's over. It's going to take time, and people are going to behave differently. Some people won't want to get on an airplane straight away. It's going to take time. Some people won't want to go on holiday, so they won't need those rental cars. So, and that's the knock-on effect for the whole industry, in my view. The new car business will suffer a tougher time than the used cars, in my view.
I believe so. I agree with that.
the new car OEMs have to ramp up their factories. So if someone is buying a new car, there might be a delay in getting the car. But also, like any recession, people, if they were going to buy a 20,000 euro car, they might decide to only spend 12,000 and buy used instead of new. So that's why the used probably be okay to a degree, but there will be a price realignment. So my view is that any dealer that has got inventory coming out of the lockdown will be taking some losses on the cost of that inventory. But that's a one-time hit. Still got to be able to afford it and still got to be able to handle the cash negative of that. But at least the market will always does settle down to a new market value.
John, well, thank you very much. I think it's a very, very interesting perspective that I think will affect basically the majority of the markets. And I think there's different views, but I truly agree with what you were saying. Let me go into a different note here. I will go more into some of your ventures, and even before that, a more sort of a selfish question that I know some people, and I don't know exactly what's on your mind on this one. That is, as you know, currently, as Stand Virtual, we are a marketplace. We are the leading marketplace in Portugal, and you have tremendous experience here, right? You acquired Motors in the UK. You've been involved in the acquisition in Australia with Cars Guide. You've been involved with Bidauto in China. We've been involved in India. You've been in Brazil with e-cars. It's endless. The number of involvement you also had with classifieds around the world. What do you think that with this, with this crisis, what will happen to this marketplace? It will be a boost. It will be a challenge. How do you see it?
You mean to the online classified businesses?
So the online classifieds, the marketplaces that can enable also the digital sales.
I think they're as recession proof as they can be, as any business can be. Particularly as you know, a lot of those markets, there tends to be one dominant player in each country. They become the norm. They become the place to go and buy cars. So I see a lot of dealers who did not have a digital strategy, an online sales strategy, will start doing that now and are already. But they still need to, like any digital platform, you still need the traffic to come to your website to buy the car. And that's expensive unless you have big marketing budgets like some of those names you just read out. I think those businesses will be fine. I don't see that an issue because they don't own the cars. That's the key thing. They don't own the inventory. They are a middleman, a mediator, bringing buyers and sellers together. They don't own the car, so they don't take the risk or the depreciation and that cost of capital. So that's a business I think will still continue. Yes, it will go down a little bit because there'll be maybe less dealers, and maybe some people go out of business. The dealers need to try and cut their costs, and but I think they'll still be around. They'll be impacted only marginally, in my view.
And as you mentioned, I think both you and me, we had some experience, right? You both of us together tried to acquire some classifieds around the world that normally were the number two because we could not, in many cases, reach the number one. The numbers were impossible, and I think we both learned that it's really, even on previous COVID, it was difficult to be a number two. Being a number two in a situation like this, people will probably tend to focus on the leader, and I think this will happen in any market around the world.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. We've learned that once you've got first market advantage and you've got scale, as many of those companies do, Auto Trader in the UK, Auto Trader in the US, car sales in Australia, all those names. Once you get scale, it's very hard. There's not many markets out there that have got a strong number two in the class. Exactly. Brazil probably is one.
No, I was just going to also in terms of like exciting things, and I know you've been involved in this, and I've been following you in terms of your the investment that you've done on Big Monitoring World Group. That, as far as I know, I still remember them from the UK. If I'm correct, they are like almost the top reference in terms of the used car operators in the UK. I know that they were like planned to sell like 40,000 cars this year, and they're probably close to that number previous year. Tremendous operations, tremendous facilities they have. You are one of the key shareholders, as far as I know, at this moment. What about this initiative? This is something that is giving you additional excitement at the moment, and we can see here some pictures for people that are listening to us about the scale and the dimension that is like pretty unique for smaller markets.
Yeah, Big Motor was a friend of mine, Pete Waddell. He's the majority owner. He's built the business up over many years. I took a minority position, invested with him. and gave him, giving him some advice and some steer. But he's the guy behind the business. He's the success behind Big Motoring World. He is I would say, a world-class retailer of used cars, and knows exactly how that market works, how the consumer thinks and buys. And that's why I invested. I invested in Pete, not so much Big Motoring World, but it is a very successful business and high volume for the UK. Tremendously good reputation. It's a great business. Used cars are a strong business. You need scale, and he's got that. Like you say, targets to sell 40,000 cars this year. I think our little challenge with COVID-19 has put a dent in, but it's a short-term blip. We're not concerned about that. We've done all the right things, as everybody else has, to right-size the business. And as soon as we come back out of this, we'll be up and running. Pete's done an amazing job of embracing the digital platform since the lockdown. He's put in place a website. You saw on the picture there.
Right, because the West, but also I was going to ask her if it's correlated what you're going to mention right now, but I seen on the news, right, that we haven't talked, both of us, about this, but you are launching, like, at least it's a new website, Carzam, right? And I think it was connected with this operation of Big Motoring World. And it almost is like the tremendous right moment, right, that you and Pete come over, announcing this almost before the COVID to boost digital sales. Is this correct? It's moving?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we've been working on it for 6 months. It's a similar business model as Carvana in the US. And there's a similar one in the UK called Cazoo. So the difference, ours is only different because we are affiliated with a very big used car business already. So the synergies of buying the cars, acquiring the cars, preparing the cars, we have all that information. We have the values. We know what cars sell for. We know how to retail cars. Pete and the team know what they're doing. That's the advantage. That's why we've done that together through with Big Motoring World and with Pete, because without a doubt, there is a massive opportunity. This is before COVID-19. I believe there's still a significant opportunity for digital sales in almost every industry, particularly cars. And that's what Carvana are doing in the US. It's still young. There's still going to be a need for physical locations, without a doubt, because what you got to remember is this is not like a classified business where you're only selling a relationship. You're selling an asset that's that needs transported. It's a logistical business as well as digital. Digital is the means to get the customer to the car, but you've still got the practicality of buying the physical car, preparing it, storing it, delivering it, and that takes time and logistics. So, but
So you think Carzan and that this operation you are leading now together with Pete and these initiatives, it will be the new Carvana in or it will be the new normal, like in the UK and even maybe in Europe?
Well, look, we announced launching it before this COVID hit us. It wouldn't have changed anything. We just put it on pause like everybody else. We're just on freeze at the moment. So when we come out of this, we will carry on with our plans. More so now because people realize that you don't have to go to a dealership to buy a car.
Exactly.
Look at Pete, Big Motoring World, what he's done during the lockdown. He's sold hundreds of cars online, digitally. Amazing, more than anybody I know. But he's doing it the right way. He's doing all in this day with our current challenges with how you social distance. He's doing all that. But the key thing is making it easy for the consumer to buy the car, and they're having confidence in it. And that's just it. I think that's where Carvana is successful, because they're growing, and the market will continue to grow on the digital sales. Do I think it will replace physical locations? No, I do not. Not for a long, long time. I think it will complement.
It'll be there. John, let me just challenge you with maybe something that might be new to you regarding Portugal. Because just to make the bridge here also to new cars that I know you also been always very looking into it. So in terms of new cars, like Carvana, maybe the example that buying a new car that is more a commodity is also possible on the internet. We have an example now in Portugal called Kia Vibe. Vibe means virtual buying experience, where you basically can go online as we can see on the picture, and there's like a big showroom of 500, 700 square meters where all the cars are. And you have like a product genius that immediately gets connects with you through the website on live and present you the car. So you can basically go to the showroom, you see the car, you go through all the specs, you can talk about finance, trade-in with him, and then the process goes from there. And this is also generating some interesting buzz on the Portuguese market at this moment, where people cannot go probably at the 1st of May can start, but at the moment, this is the only way that you can like live go and see and check cars individually, right? So my question to you is, and we are starting to see these initiatives, do you also see that the new cars will also adopt more digital sales? What would be the impact on the traditional franchise dealers? How do you see this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Nuno. I'm sure it's a question that's been played out in every OEM boardroom for the last couple of years. What do I see? Yeah, with my experience around the new car franchise, I think there's going to be some consolidation, and without a doubt, especially after this current pandemic, some dealerships won't be able to survive. It is a costly exercise with showrooms. They have to go more digital, and I'm absolutely convinced they will. It's easier to go digital with a new car than it is used car, because obviously there's no faults, there's no wear and tear, the images are less critical. So I do believe initiatives like this that you just shared with me doesn't surprise me. It's a little bit like the Apple model, like you say, with the product genius there. So yeah, that's probably, there are other businesses that have tried opening up stores in shopping malls. The Tesla model is a great example of what you're sort of suggesting there. And people are not afraid to buy cars online. They're not afraid to do that. I do believe they still need to feel that there's someone to go to.
Absolutely.
That's the only thing as a consumer. But even then, you've got to say, well, how long will that last? How long will it be before, for example, my daughter, when we bought her a car, we did it online, and did 95% of it online. All right, it was a little Audi. We said, we'll go up in the dealership and we'll go and look at the car and check a few things. Well, she's like, well, what's wrong with you, Dad? What do you mean? We just bought it. No, we've got to go and check a few things out. So you've got the millennials who won't want to go. To them, they just buy it online. Whereas my father, it's like, what do you mean? Where's the brochure? I'm not going to be buying a car unless I'm going to go and see it. So, but as time goes on, less and less people will want to go and touch and feel the car, in my view. But they do need to have confidence that behind them, because the car is a very big expense, and they want to know they can take it back to somebody and talk to an expert if they have any maintenance issues with the cars or service. So there's a big role to play for a franchise dealer network still. I think it'll just look different. I think it'll just look a bit different over the coming years. Absolutely
agree, because I can share the similar example. I maybe haven't shared with you already, but I just recently also bought a car for my daughter. And it was everything online, but the element that you mentioned there of trust was absolutely critical. So I had to have the trust that the car was in good conditions, and that way I just I ordered the car. I was outside of the country. It was even transported to my house, and the only thing that didn't work well is my daughter was sick at home, and the guy came to deliver the car, and she was the one receiving the car. It wasn't supposed to be like that, so you don't control totally the facts, but I fully agree. So getting into a closure into our interview, John, I wanted to look a little bit into the future, and you for sure seen also some of these news, and I think you already mentioned a little bit about it, that we starting to see some news coming, for instance, from China, even from Wuhan, where everything started. There's an article about an Audi dealership that they were really impressed how the sales didn't pick up so quickly, basically due to the levels pre-COVID. That it could be interesting, but I think we all need to be a little bit more careful. And I would just ask also Ricardo also to put here another element that I think you probably already seen research regarding China that I will show now, even bigger to everybody, where we can see here that pre-COVID people in China were more focusing on public transportation and even in the ride sharing and stuff like that. And now, when this research comes out, people are much more concerned about their own safety, and then they are now saying, this logic of no longer owning a car, they are more concerned about having their own car that can have some impact in terms of the future. Do you think this could be a trend that can at least mitigate part of what happened and eventually come back up in terms of the recovery of sales, even though that maybe the product that people will look for slightly different?
Yeah, I mean, that graph you just showed was I hadn't seen it before, but it doesn't shock me at all. I think there is, as I said earlier, there's a fear factor until such time this, and hopefully it will one day become just another type of flu that we can have vaccines for, and it's not an issue. Until that day comes, people are going to be very nervous still. Some more than others. So yeah, would I want to right now jump on a public transport, a tube or a metro in London to go to an office? No, not at all. I don't want to get on a bus. I would drive a car. So I think there will be some more of that. Post Corona, what does that mean in terms of car sales? I don't know. All I would say is that it's once the recession is sort of settled down and we come out of it, then I think the new norm will be all the social distance and things that we're going to have to do. There's going to be a different way of living, I believe. I don't think we're going back to where we are, whether it's the whole thing with the mask and the sanitation and the social distancing. It will change the way we behave, without a doubt. Will it increase a desire and demand for cars? I don't really know. I saw the small decline there in taxis and car hailing. Yeah, that one. I'm surprised even now that the likes of Uber and Lyft are still operating in the lockdowns. I find that one a very strange one, because I don't know if I'd want to jump in a Uber that's had 10, 20 strangers in that day.
Absolutely.
In a confined space, but they're still operating, and the governments have allowed that. So again, I don't know yet whether the consumer will be willing to jump in the Uber, or whether they start buying cars.
John, just to finish picking on your crystal ball, right? So on that new norm that you anticipate, and many people may be listening to us here from different markets, and then with all the connections you have and what you see and people you talk, what would you predict that will happen in the market over the next 6 months in terms of recovery? What would be your expectation in terms of the automotive market specifically over the next, what will be the recovery? What do you think?
I think when we come out of lockdown, however phase that is, there'll be a pivotal point where there will be a bit of a hype. I think there'll be a bit of celebration, almost a bit like winning a war and coming out on the street and having parties. And I think there'll be an element of a small spike of excitement of people going to restaurants. Yes, there'll be controls in place, social distancing, but the relief and the over anticipated release of being locked at home will create, I think, a little bit of a short term positive. But I think very quickly afterwards, people start realizing that that was a tough call. We've still not through it. We need to keep our savings. We want to be buying that car, that new house, that holiday. I think people will slow down like they always do in a recession. I think, like I said earlier, I think there'll be an oversupply of cars, cars that are in stock already, plus coming back, and a lack of demand for them. There'll be an oversupply of a lot of products and services.
What would you predict? How long do you think it's going to take us to get back to where we were in February?
I would say it would take. This is just, and I have no idea.
Crystal ball, I know, John, but that's.
I would say it would take probably to the end of the year for things to settle down. Maybe the quarter four, because you got to go through a stage of people. We got to understand what the new market is, and the size of that market will have contracted, because there'll be less people working, people made redundant, people decide to save money, they can't afford a car. So that's going to reduce the market. But the market will continue as it always does. It returns at a different level. OEMs were putting big discounts on cars to get them sold. So the prices of cars will probably come down. Same with the used cars. So used is fascinating because a €15,000 car is just gets price realigned. 3 months later, that same car is 12,000. That's the new norm. That opens up more buyers because they can now afford 12,000, but they couldn't afford 15, and it works on all levels of value. So I do think that once things settle down into the new norm, and the inventory's been flushed through, all we'll see is a price realignment on new and used, and then that will be the new norm going into next year. That will be my prediction.
John, thank you very much, for giving a little bit of a view on your crystal ball, your insights, and some very interesting stories you talked about, your experience. It's been a pleasure. I hope you can stay safe, and we really want to thank you for joining us here. I know people will really enjoy many things that you share with us today.
No, thank you, and thank you for all the years we've been working together. It's been fun, and it's been great to see you on this occasion. Looking forward to catching up with you when we're allowed out and we all can get together.
Thank you very much, John. I will just close up in Portuguese. Meus amigos, mais uma vez, muito obrigado. Foi prazer ter aqui connosco o John Bailey, que com uma experiência de mais de 30 anos em termos internacionais, a dar-nos uma perspectiva não apenas daquilo que ele está mais focado nos Estados Unidos, Inglaterra, neste momento também nos Estados Unidos, mas desses mercados um pouco mais anglo-saxónicos, mas também uma visão global daquilo que ele sente. Eu acho que é interessante para todos nós, não apenas, como acho também em termos de conhecimento. Eu acho que ele é parte desta história daquilo que se passou em termos da evolução digital, em termos de automóveis, quando as primeiras vendas começaram a ser feitas através de satélite em Inglaterra, depois passaram para os Estados Unidos e depois rapidamente apareceu a internet. Meus amigos, muito, muito em breve, durante a próxima semana, seguramente teremos mais convidados, quer do mercado nacional, quer do mercado internacional, para ir partilhando convosco aqui no Motorcast, não apenas falando um pouco daquilo que está a passar a nível do corona e desta fase que estamos a passar, e que, pelo menos no caso especial de Portugal, a partir de 4 de maio, como estamos todos a ver nas notícias, vamos começar a entrar uma nova normalidade, e é isso que eu também incentivo a todos. Vamos nos preparar para 4 de maio, nos reajustarmos. O mercado está aí, as coisas não estão com alguma normalidade. Quanto mais cedo nós retomarmos, melhor. Quanto mais adiarmos, e os números parece que ajudam nesse sentido. No entanto, mantenham seguros, mantenham-se desse lado e atentos aqui ao Motorcast do Centro Virtual. Muito obrigado. Até ao próximo episódio.